Hi, my name is Winterbub, and I have a decent amount of experience playing competitive Pokemon. But recently, I felt like I've hit a wall and can't get any better on my own. So I decided to hire a coach to see if it's worth the money and helps me improve. To make this coaching session easier, we will be playing Gen 9 OU singles on Pokemon Showdown, an online battle simulator. For those of you interested in coaching for yourselves, I'll tell you how much I spent and my thoughts on the service at the end, so stay tuned. Now allow me to introduce my coach, Pinkacross. Pink is an extremely talented player, hitting rank 1 in the world on multiple occasions. On their most recent placing, they used an unorthodox team they made featuring Aloe Momola, a Pokemon that didn't see a ton of use before that. If you don't have the money for coaching, their YouTube channel has a lot of free resources, so make sure to check it out. It'll be linked in the description, along with the link to their coaching. Now let's get into the first step, team building.
So what will it be? Clefable or Greninja? Both are definitely viable. They'll take us in very different directions as far as kind of what style we'll be using, but both are great.
Let's do Greninja.
Okay. So the other thing, as we go through this team building process, this is going to be basically the same process you'll go through. If as long as your goal is to win, this is what you're going to be doing. Whether you're building around like a meme Pokemon, like oh, because I know you're on YouTube, you might want to say, I really want to make Sarina sweep in OU or whatever, or I want to have a team with Hisuian Typhlosion, right? You'll go about it the same way you would building around Great Tusk. Uh, the way of looking, at a Pokemon's strengths and weaknesses and finding things to complement it doesn't change. With the only exception being if your goal suddenly becomes not to win, but to set one specific thing up for a sweep, then the teams get weird and the rules start to change. Um, but let's see. So the first step in team building is really determining what's viable and what's not, in a competitive sense at least. Greninja, we know it's viable. It's in OU. It's good. We can skip that step. That's most important when you're looking at those Pokemon that are sort of in that mid-level, like maybe something like Haxorus or Mamoswine. You're not quite sure. Is it viable? Maybe. You might have to do some testing to determine whether it is or not.
Right.
Yeah. So now, when you get to the actual building process, that first step is going to be a kind of selecting a viable Pokemon or core. In this case, we've selected Greninja, so we're good there. Step two, identifying which play style is going to suit this Pokemon or core best. And this is the point at which the team can branch off into multiple versions. In my builder, even when I build one Pokemon, I'll sometimes have maybe 10, 20 different teams, and that is totally okay. You can have a lot of different versions because there are more than one way you can use Greninja. But before we decide that, do you have a particular Greninja set that you'd like to work on?
I definitely want to use Battle Bond. Uh, I'm I like either Specs or Life Orb for that.
Okay, yeah, Battle Bond is great. And I'd say Life Orb is probably the most viable Battle Bond variant. Yeah, we don't have to have the specific moves in yet. I mean, we know we'll be running certain things like we can be pretty confident we'll be running either Surf or Hydro for Dark Pulse and Ice Beam, Grass Knot, Water Shuriken. These are all likely options. But until we know what the rest of the team is, we don't really know what weaknesses we'll have to cover. So we can just leave it blank. Next up is, yeah, that play style. So there are a lot of ways we could take this. We could go and do a rain team. We could do an HO, or it could be offense. Those are probably our three big options. Do either of those really jump out at you as appealing?
Um, well,
I can explain what those kinds of teams would look like if you want.
yeah. What would like an HO with Greninja look like?
So Greninja HO oftentimes is going to have a just a standard Glamora lead because Greninja loves Hazard Chip. So you're almost certainly going to have some kind of hazard setting lead. And that could be spikes, could be a Hisuian Samurott lead. Um, Potentially, you could even run a team with something like Glamora plus Ogre upon Wellspring with spikes, which Pokemon actually does get spikes, but you at least want Stealth Rock. So definitely hazards. And then with the rest of the team, well, you'll have some standard HL mons, some things that you just almost need to bring. Like you'll probably have a Roaring Moon and an Iron Moth. And then you'll have probably some other team members whose sets are designed to chip stuff down for Greninja. For example, a Calm Mind Iron Valiant is going to be something that can do significant chip to a lot of specially defensive walls, like King Lu, Galarian Slowking, maybe even King Gambit has to take a Moonblast to knock it out. So these are the kinds of things like, oh, Empoleon, there's another great one. So a Calm Mind Iron Valiant and alongside with Greninja would work well for that. But for the most part, it'll look like a really standard HO, some hazard lead. The only real way that it would be Greninja specific is that those sweepers would be focused on wearing down specially defensive walls. Like you wouldn't have Greninja, Lamora for physical attacking sweepers.
Right. That sounds pretty interesting to me. I'd be down to build that.
Yeah, the offense would basically be a little different in the sense that Greninja would probably be the only, I guess, quote, setup Pokemon. Battle Bond isn't exactly set up, but the rest of the team would probably not be spamming setup moves. Just to add a little more consistency, we'd probably have a Cinderace, we'd have a lot of pivots likely, and we would still need hazards because Greninja loves that. And then the rain, I think you know what that would look like. You know, Pelipper, Basculegion. I'm not a big fan of rain right now because Ogre Pond Wellspring creates a pretty big issue for all rain teams.
Yeah, for sure.
So, what are you feeling like?
Let's do HO.
Okay, fantastic. So, what kind of lead are you liking for HO?
I already put Lamora on. I like Lamora for it.
I agree. In the past, I might have said Hisuian Samurott, but it's really fallen off lately. The meta has not been kind to it, so I think Lamora is the better option.
And
We can leave that said.
I had a
Sorry,
question.
go
I was
for it.
like, so if we had Hisuian Samurott, it would be like stacking like two water dark types. Does that not matter as much on something like, because they do like completely different things, or is it like, could it be detrimental?
In general, stacking the same types is not great defensively, but it can be very good offensively. So on something like an HO, we wouldn't really care about that. It would not be a significant disadvantage to be running a Hisuian Samurott alongside a Greninja. The bulkier a team gets, the more sensitive you need to be to those defensive roles and not having any defensive overlap. But with an HO, you have a lot of freedom and you're focused because you don't mind sacking something, which is a huge part of what makes HO what it is. And that allows you to basically ignore a lot of rules of defensive team building and just focus on breaking. So if you're running a bulkier team and you had something like an Oxapex and an Amoonguss on the same team, like two bulky kind of poison types that are water resistances, that probably is a mistake because you've got two things that are often have a lot of overlapping roles. But on HO, you got a water dark type, another water dark type with Greninja, Hisui, and Samurai. You could just say, okay, well, one likes spikes, the other sets spikes. Okay, we're all good.
All right, gotcha. That makes sense.
Okay, so now we can get into the sweepers. Yeah, so one example I gave was Iron Valiant. That's a very obvious addition. I think almost every HO uses one. Almost every HO really needs one these days. But there are a few options as for the setting to go. What kind of set do you think we should run here?
Well, you already brought up Calm Mind. I think that's pretty solid. Another thing, if you wanted to like annoy the bulkier Pokemon, I feel like Encore could also be good, but I don't know if that has as much of a place on HO as it does on another like a different type of style. I'll be like pretty transparent here. I'm not super like confident when it comes to like identifying like the different team styles and stuff. I kind of just throw stuff together that I feel works good together and like has synergy. And I've never like paid too much attention on like different labels like HO or like balance or like whatever.
Yeah, that's probably a big part of what's keeping you in 1600s and keeping you from growing. And it's a super common mistake. That's what I think everybody at one point does that because there are a lot of appealing synergies in the tier. But the reason play style is so important, and the reason it was really early on in the team building process to actually look at which play style you're using, is because play styles emerge because they have a goal.
Right.
They're archetypes that exist because they work together to achieve something, and that goal is always being winning, but they have different ways to go about that. The HO idea is that you have a lot of sweepers. Well, there are two ways an HO can go. Either you have a lot of sweepers that kind of hit the opponent in the same area with the hopes that one of them is eventually going to overwhelm your opponent.
Hmm.
So if you were running a team, say with a Dragon Dance Roaring Moon and a King Gambit and a Swords Dance Rillaboom and a Sneasler, that's something where you have a lot of physical attackers that are going to try to put a lot of pressure on perhaps the opponent's Dondozo and Corviknight and stuff like that. They have the Roaring Moon be Taunt, which would make it a worse sweeper alone, but alongside those other physical setup sweepers, it makes the team a lot more threatening. The second type of HO is just using a bunch of sweepers that hit in different areas. So they do very different things. You may have one thing, you may have your Swords Dance King Gambit, you may have your Sub Calm Mind Enamorus, and your Dragon Dance Dragapult, things that don't really work together, but threaten different types of teams. And your hope is that one of them is just going to basically win on preview or do enough damage that the rest of your team can clean up. But that's the goal. That's the game plan of HO. And you've got something like Stall, where the goal is to wall you out, or Balance, where the goal is to use their bulkier Pokemon to enable their more offensive Pokemon to break over the course of the game with some speed control to limit playstyles like HO. So all these playstyles have a goal, and if you just kind of work and add things together that have synergy without considering having a unified playstyle, you're going to end up with a lot of Pokemon that don't work together. Like if you had, and say, a Swords Dance Sneasler plus Rillaboom in the middle of a bulkier team, that's going to be a big problem. Because even though Rillaboom and Sneasler work well together, that Sneasler has one shot to break, and the rest of the team is not enabling it to do so. Because if you have a bulky team, the opponent will not have a problem keeping their own Pokemon healthy. So when that Sneasler comes in, it's going to have to face a full team of healthy Pokemon. And it's going to hate that. It will probably, unless your opponent happens to have a team with absolutely nothing for Sneasler,
Right.
the Sneasler will faint, and then your opponent will have no issue healing their Pokemon back up. So the rest of the team didn't support it, even though it worked well synergy-wise. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense.
Yeah. In this case, this HO, we're going more in the direction of hitting the opponent in the same area rather than a bunch of random sweepers.
So would something like Specs Pulp be good?
Potentially. Usually choice Pokemon on HO are discouraged.
Oh, okay.
But choice specs Dragapult, and just the reason for that is that HO likes to keep things very fast paced and it relies upon constantly putting pressure on the opponent. And if your opponent knows your choice specs and does something like, switch into a King Gambit or some other like a Tingaloo, you kind of have lost that ability to pressure because you're locked in. That being said, Choice Specs Dragapult is an amazing Pokemon. It can work on HO. I've seen it work on HO, so we shouldn't necessarily disqualify that.
All right.
But let's look for some sweepers first, because we've still got room. And at this stage in the building process, where we only have 3 Pokemon, we have a lot of freedom. If we start adding things that might be good, we'll have to support those later with the decisions we make. Because by the time you have 5 Pokemon, you basically have to run something in the last slot. You don't get a choice.
Right.
Because you have weaknesses you need to cover. But at this stage, we can look for what is best. And that's why we added Iron Valiant and Glamora to this Greninja. We said these are probably the best ways to support Greninja. And we probably, because it's an HO and there's a lot of freedom in building, since we've forgotten about basically all defensive capabilities, we still have a bit of freedom. So let's not just add something that might work. Let's look for what is best. And a good question to start with is, what do you think Greninja struggles with breaking?
Um, so we said it probably struggles with Empoleon, probably Spadef Clef. Um,
Hmm.
Hex could be a problem. So bulkier resist, I guess.
Okay, nice. So now we can actually take that and look at kind of what Iron Valiant we might want to run too. Now that you've gone over that list, is there any set that's jumping out at you?
Um, definitely having a psychic and fighting coverage is good for that to be able to hit those. I don't know a specific set. Um,
Yeah, no problem. So we almost always want to run Calm Mind and Moonblast.
mhm.
Iron Valiant can drop Moonblast, but generally not a good idea. If we did drop Moonblast, the set we'd probably be running is Calm Mind, Shadow Ball, or Sphere Psyshock. But I would say we could run Calm Mind, um, Moonblast, or Sphere Shadow Ball as well. This is not going to help us break Unaware Clefable, um, but we can have other things on the team to pressure that. And this would do a lot of damage to Empoleon, which is the main thing we're trying to hit here. This would also give us a nice way to Oko King Gambit.
Oh yeah, true, true.
Something else we could do though, is you had that Encore idea. A very popular set is Terra Ghost with Calm Mind, Moonblast, Encore, Shadow Ball. And that would not pressure Empoleon quite as hard, but it would help us deal with Unaware Clefable, and it would still deal decent damage to Empoleon. So those are our two options. That's something to consider. We can decide later when the whole team is assembled,
Hmm.
but it's worth keeping in mind. Now that you've gone over that list of that, and Empoleon's Galarian's Slowking is the one thing I'd add to that. Even though uh, it's weak to Dark Pulse, they really often don't mind using their Terra, and it can still take a Dark Pulse pretty well.
Right.
And then the other thing might be Rillaboom to keep an eye on, just because that can is basically the one thing that can really outspeed Greninja, essentially, after
Okay.
Battle Bond. Mm-hmm. And unlike Dragonite Extreme Speed, we can't really Terra to avoid that either. Anything Greninja Terras into is still going to take loads from a Grassy Glide.
Then something we could add is Iron Moth because it 4 times resists both Glide and Moonblast from Clefable.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a great plan. And the other thing to note is that that also applies pressure to Empoleon
Right.
and Galarian Slowking. So I think that's a great addition. We can decide on speed or special attack boosting later. I'm normally inclined to go speed boosting, but we'll see. Maybe we end up with a really fast team and don't need it. All right. Are there any other sweepers that are really jumping out at you?
Um, honestly, not really. I'm not sure where to go from here.
Mhm. So here is where we want to start worrying about our more defensive side of things. Because even though it is an HO team, we still don't want to get swept on team preview by our opponent's Iron Valiant, for example.
Hmm.
Because right now, if you look at a set like Calmine, Moonblast, Psyshock, our answer for that is hoping our Iron Valiant wins the speed tie, which is not great. So we'll definitely want something for that. One potential answer is King Gambit, which doesn't love taking Moonblast, but if we have a bulkier set, it will be able to take on almost all Calm Mind variants. Absolutely nobody is running Aura Sphere these days. So that is one option. Goldengo is also very popular. Probably seen the air balloon sets around.
Yeah, Goldengo is what I was looking at.
Mm-hmm. The other thing is, you notice our team right now doesn't really love Gliscor. Iron Valiant can't OHKO and it gets poisoned. Iron Moth hates it. Glamora doesn't love it. Greninja is the only thing that's really okay with it. So maybe an Air Balloon Goldengo would fit here. Kingambit, though, can also run Air Balloon and Wall Gliscor too, at least the Toxic Earthquake sense.
So my thoughts on King Gambit as a Pokemon is it's kind of like I think it's kind of just like unfun. I the thing with it is I feel like a lot of the times like obviously it doesn't have to be played like this, but a lot of the times people play it. It's like you're playing a 5v6 until King Gambit comes out at the end to like do things, or like at least it's a very late game kind of Pokemon, and
Mm.
it's like I don't mind that. Like there's a lot of Pokemon that love to do that, but I hate that it's Supreme Overlord gives it that one niche where it's just like the best Pokemon to have late game, and I
Mhm.
there's like almost no other way to use it, and I hate that so much.
Yeah, that's fair. Um, in this context, though, as an HO team,
Hmm.
we're sacking a lot of Pokemon, and we're doing it quickly. So a Kingambit is probably maybe even optimal for HO. That's
Yeah,
not to
no,
say
I
you
agree
need
with
it.
that.
You don't need Kingambit on HO, but it is a pretty fantastic option. So are you thinking Kingambit or Goldengo?
Um, stuff. We could do King Gambit.
Mm. So we can run both is the other thing to consider, but
Mhm.
I would be leaning toward Goldengo here, and the reason for that is mostly Sneasler, and that's
Oh,
still running around. The other thing, we're not too worried about Zamazenta, but it helps a little bit against that. Um, but both are solid options. But actually, on the other hand, with Sneasler having that option to Terra and use Shadow Claw,
yeah.
realistically, is Goldengo even an answer? So let's try our Air Balloon King Gambit. And I would say because we added this on sort of to answer Iron Valiant, we definitely want to run a bulky variant.
Mhm.
Okay, now we've got our last slot. This is the point at which you have the least freedom in the team building process. And this is why we really focused on finding the best things we could early on. Because if you just focus on adding mediocre things or things that might be good, now you're constrained at this point and you might never get to add those things that are really good. So you can kind of think of the first half of team building as, putting everything on your wish list on the team. And then the second part is making that supporting that wish list that those all those things you really wanted to fit.
Yeah.
And sometimes your wish list might be too much. It could be you can't fit that all, and that's okay too. You can go back and reevaluate that. But here I think we can afford it. But this is a good time to just go through the tier and ask yourself, what are we losing to?
Um, Ground types look pretty scary. We do have Air
Hmm.
Balloon King Gambit, but like that might not necessarily be enough, especially after the balloon gets popped to be able to deal with ground types.
Yeah,
Uh,
I agree. That's definitely scary.
uh, we also have no electric resist
Hmm.
or immunity. Uh,
Yeah, these are all good things you've identified for sure. I'd say Sneasler is another thing that I'm really worried about. Because currently our best response is a King Gambit, and that doesn't feel good.
right.
So, is there anything you can see that helps us with all those problems? And other one more thing I want to talk about is Ogrepon Wellspring. I think looks a bit scary here.
Yeah.
Just with Encore for King Gambit, pretty good against Greninja, able to switch in if it catches us on the water move. Iron Valiant can't OHKO, and especially if it Terras into the Terra Water special defensive variants, it kind of runs through our whole team. Our only water resist is Greninja, which isn't ideal either. Is there a Pokemon that jumps out at you? I do have something in mind, but I want to see if you can find it here. Is there anything that works on an ATO playstyle? Yeah. deals with what we need or helps with what we need.
Yeah. The reason I picked HO is because I feel like it's the archetype. Sorry, I'm a little bit tired, so I'm stumbling over my
No
words.
worries.
I think it's the archetype that I'm like least familiar with, so it's kind of hard for me to like find these answers. One thing that could be nice is Wake because it's a really good water resist, but I don't know how good that's gonna want to take grass attacks from Ogre Pond, and also the speed tier is kind of unfortunate, being a little bit slower.
Yeah. So Wake isn't a bad thought, and it does do some of what we need. It provides a great water resist, so we that would help against rain, and with agility, that would add another threatening sweeper. But it also kind of overlaps a lot with Greninja at being
Mm-hmm.
unable to take on Empoleon, and it doesn't help out with Sneasler so much. So and or Ogerpon, it's a little bit weak to Ogerpon as well. So I was thinking Dragonite.
Oh, okay. I
This
thought
doesn't
about it,
help us.
but I completely glossed over it. I'm like, oh, Dragonite could be cool. I'm like, ah, no, never mind.
So Dragonite here, because of multi-scale, and we're almost certainly going to run heavy-duty boots, we can live any hit from Sneasler and either choose to Dragon Dance into extreme speed or hit it with an Earthquake into extreme speed. Sneasler hates being Dragonite. So we check that box. Ogerpon Wellspring, is coming in on that. Really nice. And the other great thing is the fact that you can Dragon Dance. And even if you're running a bulkier set, then follow it up with an extreme speed to avoid any encore shenanigans. Also helps out with Rillaboom a bit. Now, the one thing it doesn't do is kind of work toward that goal of chipping special walls for Greninja, but that's okay. Because as I said, at this point in the process, you can't have everything you want. You're never going to have a team that absolutely every single Pokemon works together perfectly to fuel that initial Pokemon because you have to worry about things like getting your defensive, uh, you know, synergy in order. Okay, so now it's time to fill in the sets. This can be another point where things go awry for people. Let's start with the easiest and do Glamora.
Yep.
Toxic Debris, Focus Sash. A lot of Glamora sets are personal preference. You're not going to, as long as you're running Stealth Rock and Mortal Spin, you're not making a huge mistake. For the last two, my personal favorites are Power Gem and Earth Power.
Yeah, I like that.
And as for the Terra type, I would say Ghost, just in case something tries to spin on your Glamora. For the most part, you don't want to Terra Ghost a Glamora just to avoid Rapid Spin. But there are some teams that hate Toxic Spike so much that it's actually worth it. And that's the only case in which I could see myself using Terra on.
So if like just if T spikes just look really strong in the matchup, that's like when it's
Mhm.
valuable.
Yeah, so like imagine a great Tusk leads against you and clicks Headlong Rush as you click Stealth Rock. So now you have one layer of rocks and one Toxic Debris layer up. And then you look at their team, they have no other removal other than Great Tusk, and they really hate um, Toxic Spikes. Everything on their team is taking Toxic Spikes or something like that, or five of the Pokemon. You could Terra Ghost and Earth Power them, which would chip them a lot, prevent their Rapid Spin, and make it so that even if they're tough Terra, it wouldn't really be able to live a hit from a lot of your sweepers. And that could be worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're thinking about Terra types with Pokemon that almost never Terra, it's good to think of those neat situations, because that's normally when it'll happen. All right, let's do our Greninja now. So I think we want Dark Pulse.
Yep.
Nothing huge or revolutionary there. I'm definitely a fan of Water Shuriken. How about what do you think about that?
Um, my issue with Water Shuriken is it just feels like it takes up a move slot. Like after you get Battle Bond, like it will help you get Battle Bond, but after you do, it's just like it's kind of a waste of move slot because you're gonna be faster than most things anyways.
Hmm. That's true. It can get a little bit of extra tip against Rillaboom and King Gambit,
Yeah.
especially you can play Sucker Punch games. But I definitely see what you're talking about. It isn't the most strong option. Um, so what are your preferred move
I like
options here?
Surf. I don't like missing Hydro Pump. That never feels good.
I
And then
agree. I'm a surf guy through and through. I haven't run Hydro Pump in years.
I guess grass knot is like that doesn't matter as much to me now that stuff like Garg is less relevant. Um,
Hmm.
so
Yeah,
I
I
guess we
agree.
could. I know, I love Ice Beam, especially for like you said, Gliscor being a problem. I mean, it at
Yeah,
least forces a Terra on it or forces it out.
mhm. I agree. I think Ice Beam is a great option. Also, Roaring Moon. Like
Yeah,
Roaring Moon's presence alone. Hopefully, it gets banned soon, but we need to consider it now.
yeah. It's so
Okay, so we
weird
got
hearing people talk about like banning Roaring Moon because especially when I played a ton of OU, it was like barely even used.
yeah. No, it got two big buffs with knockoff and Baxcalibur leaving.
Yeah.
So it's like it's doing great right now. All right, so for our last slot, now we've got Dark Pulse, Surf, Ice Beam.
Mhm.
Possible options: we could run Shuriken, we could run Hydro Pump, we could run Spikes.
Yeah, I'm okay with Shuriken at this point. Whereas because that slot I would normally put Grass Knot, but I don't really see a need to.
Yeah, I agree. The Grass Knot is not really what it used to be. I think we want to just go Timid Max
Yep.
and Max Special Attack. I have seen Modest, and I'm a greedy guy. I like the Modest, but it's probably not the best choice here.
Yeah, absolutely not.
Now, Terra type. I'd say it's got to be either water or ghost. You'd run water to just, become more powerful, and you'd run ghost to get past that extreme speed Dragonite and hit with the ice beam.
Um, yeah, I like Ghost for that. Normally I'd run Water, for the extra power, but I think Ghost could be very valuable. It could also like live a or it baits a like a close combat from like an Unburden Sneasel or something like that.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. Okay, Iron Valiant time. So we want booster energy,
Hmm.
and we're running Calm Mind, Moonblast. I don't think we ended up settling on the set. We've got a few, so we could run as our last two Encore Shadow Ball. We could run. I think we need Shadow Ball, just because Goldango exists, and I don't want to be helpless against that. But for our last, could be Encore, could be Aura Sphere, could be Psyshot. What do you prefer?
Um, I like Psyshock for dealing with Pex.
All right, let's do it. Yeah, the Iron Valiant set's also mostly personal preference.
Hmm.
Just if when you're in a game, ask yourself, oh man, I really wish I had Encore here. How often are you saying that? Or maybe Psyshock feels great. And like, wow, I'm so glad I had Psyshock here.
Right.
As for the Iron Valiant Terra type, we've got a few options. Probably Steel is the main one that I would go for, because Galarian's floating these days. They've stopped running Thunder Wave. They have a lot of pressure in their move slots. They want to run Surf to cover Iron Moth. They want to run Ice Beam to Risk. They want Silly Reception. They want Slack Off. So Thunder Wave is almost never seen. So we can get away with Terra Steel and try and wind up on Galarian's floating.
Yeah, I like Terra Steel.
Also gives you a toxic immunity because so you can muscle past Toxapex.
Right.
All right, let's go for Dragonite. Why don't we?
All
So
right.
we have three slots that are very easy. We know the Terra type will be normal, too good to turn down. We know we'll be running Dragon Dance and Earthquake and Extreme Speed. Last slot could be Roost or it could be an additional coverage move. I think on a team like this, I just want to go with Fire Punch.
Yeah, I was gonna ask how prevalent like Corv is right now.
Especially the other thing is just Air Balloon Goldengo is everywhere. I think
Okay.
if you're running a Dragonite set that can't hit Air Balloon Goldengo, that's a big problem.
Fair enough.
King Gambit time. We want Sword Dance and we want Sucker Punch. Last two slots, we could get a little funky with it. Possible last slot options, we could run Houseco Cleave and Iron Head could do Kowtow Cleave and Low Kick, but because we're running a bulkier set, we aren't going to be outspeeding other King Gambit, but that doesn't necessarily mean we shouldn't run Low Kick.
I mean, I don't know if Valiant and Moth are like enough to deal with Gambit. I feel like we don't have like a fighting move on Valiant, so we might want to have one on King Gambit.
Mm-hmm. Okay, sounds good. So let's go with Kowtow Cleave and Low Kick then. Actually, though, we did also add this Iron Valiant to sort of help with opposing Iron Valiant. So I'm thinking we go SD, Sucker Punch, Iron Head, Low Kick.
All right.
I don't love dropping Kowtow Cleave, but Skeletor is very rare at the moment, so it shouldn't be too much of an issue. And as for our Terra type, hard to say what's good here. You could run Ghost for extra Sneasler insurance. You could run Terra Flying just to be annoying. They pop your balloon, and then they try to hit you with your ground move, and then you Terra Fly. That's a pretty fun one.
Yeah, I like that one. I used to use that on Golden Go back in pre-home.
All right, let's do it. And then our last is Iron Moth. Only major decision we have here is speed boosting or special attack boosting. Normally, I'm a speed boosting guy, but here I'm actually thinking maybe special attack is the way to go because we want to really chip those Slow Kings and Empoleon for Grandeur.
Yeah, I like that a lot too. We have a lot of speed control on our team in priority, so I think having this special attack will be huge.
Okay, now the next we want Fiery Dance and we want Flood Fade. For the other slot, we could run. Well, there are a lot of things we could run.
Yeah, well, this thing has a really good move pool. I haven't really like taken too big of a look at it.
Yeah, I think Energy Ball is always a good option.
Yeah, I like that.
Gets us some damage on King Lu, Garganackle. Not super common, but they're still out there. And a popular final option is either Substitute or Dazzling Gleam. I would say we can probably just go 4 attacks here and run Dazzling Gleam, probably with Terra Fairy as our last. And just standard max special attack. The other small detail that I like to do with all of my teams is just making every Pokemon female to avoid cute charm shenanigans from an Amorous.
That is fair.
Okay, I will send this team your way.
Oh, I also built it alongside you.
Okay. Just so you have all the sets I put in, I'll pass it to you.
All right.
But if we can also use, I'm sure your version is very close or exact. So whenever you're ready, feel free to search on the ladder and let's start talking about the more playing and in-game aspect of HO. One thing that's very important, I'll just start explaining as you search, the HO is positioning. And this is something that's also can be a struggle for people who are in middle ladder, is that kind of that understanding that there are a lot of factors in a game beyond health, where your Pokemon are at. So what I mean by positioning is basically just that, those factors in a game that aren't related to what is healthy, how many Pokemon you have left. It can be things like hazards. It can be things like which Pokemon are more set up to win. It can be how strong your Pokemon are. So a very simple example of positioning could be deciding early game to set Stealth Rock, because you acknowledge that that is more impactful than doing damage right now. And then it can get really complicated though, like setting up a Pokemon to be sacked to give a sweeper an opportunity to set up something like that. So as we go through this game, try to consider that. And I noticed you said you also had some issues with identifying the win times, so we're going to focus on that as well.
Right. So I feel like webs can be kind of bad for our team, but I realize we don't really have a way to deny them, so it's kind of irrelevant.
You do have one way. You have Mortal Spin.
Oh, well, yeah, we can remove them. That's right.
So I would say we want to click that here, because you are never getting a Mortal Spin. And he's chosen to Terra Steel.
Yep.
Okay. So we've got a few options. We could use, he's probably going to click Psychic here. We
Yeah, that's
could
what I was
use Stealth Rock, or we could use Earth Power.
thinking. I like just breaking out Sash, so we can maybe spin on something later. Uh,
Glimora, I will say, is never going to spin. With that, that's an
yeah,
Air Balloon Goldengoron. I would be shocked if this Glimora ever gets a Mortis spin off.
yeah, that's what I was just seeing.
But the good thing is he's used his Terra very early on, which
Yeah,
is good for us.
we don't have to deal with Terra Moon, which is nice.
Okay, so he's running Terra Blast. That means his last two moves are probably actually well, no, honestly, the guy running Terra Blast Steel or Bombi, I'm not gonna make any assumptions. He's already way off the beaten path.
Yeah. Um, I like just killing this just so I don't have to.
Well, I wouldn't be too hasty because keep in mind you still have that corrosive um, ability. And if you switch that in on any physical attacker, the rest of their team will be dealing with toxic spikes. So ask
So,
yourself, what would you go into after this Glimmer Dance? What would you switch into?
well, I could just go Moth here, since he said he
You could,
probably
yeah.
wouldn't have
Lock
Psychic
here
and
is an option.
Terra Blast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we're not going to take very much, which is solid too. Okay,
Yeah,
yeah, so we take, and we nicely dodge the special attack drop. It's a shame we don't have agility here. Might be an option to consider for our last slot, but for now, we can just go for a nice little fiery dance.
oh my
Okay,
gosh.
so Stun 4 comes out. Little unfortunate, but nothing terrible. And Iron Moth wasn't extremely strong anyway. The
Yeah,
good thing is, though, Iron Moth here is powerful enough that he has to attack. This Manaphy cannot afford to set up. It's going to take an extremely powerful energy ball if it tries to. So let's see. If he gets greedy and we get paralyzed, then we're in trouble. But let's see what happens. Okay, he's using Take Heart. And oh no, that's not good. Nothing to do but click Energy Ball again, though. If we had an Encore Iron Valiant, maybe, but.
yeah, we're doing.
Mhm.
It looks a lot bulkier.
Yeah, this is definitely a bulkier variant. Not much we can do but keep going, though. The good thing is, at least we, to some extent, deny the acid armor.
Yeah.
Mhm. Okay. This is a very tough situation.
So, my thought process is Valiant and Greninja are not going to do anything to it. Glimmer gets outsped. That's
Mhm.
a waste of time. So my options are King Gambit and Dragonite. And King Gambit's not going to do shit, right? Oh god, I have no time. I'm going
Let's
Dragonite.
go. Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree
yeah,
with Dragonite.
yeah. Okay, okay.
Let's click DD here. He's probably going to use acid armor. Okay, it looks like he's very bulky, and never mind, he has ice speed. That's very interesting. Okay, it's time for King Gambit and clicking Sucker Punch.
I'm
So
praying.
unfortunately, that is the most damage we can do to this thing, and he's probably going to go for the Scald.
Yeah,
Yeah. So we can probably forfeit here.
yeah, yeah. That
This
sucks.
was an unfortunate case in which our team just simply loses to Webs plus Take Heart Manaphy. Maybe if we hadn't gotten paralyzed that first turn, things would have been different. Hard to say. Not a big issue though. That's part of what makes HO what it is its inconsistency.
Yeah, matchup
Because
fishy.
yeah, it's a little fishy. It's not quite as matchup fishy as Stall because you still have a little more mobility and being able to outplay your opponent, but it's not great.
Right.
But I think you did a good job there of identifying your only outs, which in that case was Dragonite. So I think that was well done. Even though things really went downhill and we got destroyed, it was well played.
Right. Should I queue up one
I
more?
would watch out. Yeah, yeah, go for it.
Okay, okay, okay.
I would watch out though for making because I noticed you said, well, maybe we can get a rapid spin or a mortal spin off with Gilmore later. Given that he had two steel types, one of which probably being an air balloon Goldengo, that was an extremely distant possibility. And the fact that he Terra Steeled his Ribombi turn one really showed off the fact that he really wanted those sticky webs up and he knew that they were very good against us.
All right, I queued against some guy using like ZU, so I just forfeited and got a different one. All
Okay, fair enough.
right, this team looks a lot more reasonable for the tier. Bro had like a primate. It was not.
Hmm.
It was
Oh
something
boy,
else. Yeah.
yeah, that's some
So
clown shenanigans going on.
he absolutely has Hattering to deny hazards. He does have to respect the Sludge Wave though, so I don't know if he'd necessarily lead with it, or if he'd lead with something like Ting Lu and then go into Hattering to try to block them.
I'd say either way, Glamor is probably a pretty safe lead.
Hmm.
Neither Pinglu nor Hattering really love taking a mortal spin. But now that we see this in front of us, he's probably just going for a psychic move here.
Yeah,
Nuzzle is possible, but I think it's probably going to be a psychic move. We could just go into King Gambit and threaten out with an Iron Head.
like that.
Okay, so it is a Nuzzle. That's pretty sad. But we can still Iron Head here.
Yeah.
Okay, that is.
You know what?
We're not
Mons is
not too
Mons.
lucky today, but it's all right. We're still in a decent spot. We can go Glamora here because the thing is he has no removal and he hates toxic spikes,
Yeah.
and so anything this can hit us with is a win for us, except for Ruination. But to take us out, he'll have to Earthquake. So the Hatterene is likely coming in
Yeah.
here. So I would say we just Power Jump. And depending on his stat, this might even do a KO. But we'll see. Okay, now so he's pretty bulky, and
Oh,
he's red card, but we get a nice
perfect.
draw. So we got pretty lucky there.
Is-
And he knows we have Iron Head, so I would actually be inclined to go back into Glamora here, because he will almost certainly want to switch out. Wonderful. So now we're in a pretty winning position. We don't need Stealth Rock. Stealth Rock would be nice, but it's not totally necessary. And he's getting smoked by Toxic Spikes. So I would
Yeah.
say we just Mortal Spin.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah, so the reason we go for Mortal Spin over Power Gem is because Power Gem does nothing, basically. And Hatterene still would have died to a Mortal Spin plus a Power Gem. Nice. So now we can KO the Hatterene. Unless he's a really odd set, this will always kill. Nice. And now he has nothing to deny Stealth Rock. So Glamora does outspeed Goldengo, but the fact that he's making this play makes me think he's Choice Scarfed. And we have a perfect response to Choice Scarf Goldengo.
Uh,
Which is King Gambit here.
okay.
You can kind of start to tell what sets your opponent is running based on how they're playing. He really didn't want us to get Stealth Rocks up, and he didn't want us to get Toxic Spikes up, and all of a sudden he's switching in a Goldengo on a Glamora that he gets outspent by. That's a very odd play. Therefore, we can conclude he's almost certainly Choice Scarf. He still may not be Choice Scarf, but it's
Right.
very, very likely.
Would you just sucker here? Or?
But he's locked into Shadow Ball, so I would probably go for Iron Head just to hit Zamazenta coming in for a little more. Okay, or Tornadus, something like that. King Gambit's not very strong here, and it's not going to be doing much in the late game against Komo and Zamazenta. So probably we just click Iron Head again, let it go down, see what happens. And nice, we get a little bit of luck. Oh, we get paralyzed though. Oh, that is A-okay.
So what I was thinking when the Goldengo came out was Greninja and Iron Moth as options as well to play more offensively because they resist both its like attacks for the most part.
Those are definitely options. The risk there would have been Psyshock and Focus Blast, and because we didn't care about King Gambit, that was a little easier.
Yeah, that's valid.
But those wouldn't have been, excuse me, those wouldn't have been mistakes either. Had you gone into either of those Pokemon, that would have been a fair play. What do you think here?
I think I just sucker punch till I die.
I agree. Sacking, knowing when to sack, is a really essential part of Hyper Offense. Okay, and he's going to Trick. That is fine. Now, this is a little bit of a tricky turn. What do you want to do here?
Probably like Iron Head to avoid setup if something wants to come out.
Exactly. I agree. Especially the Como.
Yeah.
Sure enough, out it comes. Yeah, that could have been really scary had you gone for Sucker Punch there, thinking the Guldengo would just take you out, and suddenly you'd have to deal with a boosted up Como.
How do we stop this from boosting right now, though? I guess, oh, because it takes damage when it boosts, that's right. Or if it does
Yeah,
something respawn,
exactly.
which is the scary
You
one.
can't, yeah, you can't exactly stop it, but we have a lot of priority. We've got Extreme Speed Dragonite and Iron Valiant outspeeds unless it goes for two, which it cannot afford to do with
Right.
its health.
So I'll just Iron
And
Head here.
the other great thing, yeah, you just Iron Head. The other great thing is that King Gambit is actually so, wow, he didn't even set up. That's that is fantastic news for us.
Yeah.
Mm. So
I'm
I'll
look.
tell you what sorry, what were you gonna say?
I was looking at his team right now. I'm seeing like zero fire resist.
hmm Yeah, well, he does have Ting Lu, which is going to totally block our Iron Moth, but it still won't really like an fiery dance into an energy ball. But there
Mhm.
are other options we have here. But that's probably one of our best. We could go into Dragonite. We could go into Iron Moth. Okay, Iron Moth works.
My thing with Dragonite is I kind of want to keep the multi skill for like setting up something towards the end game.
hmm That's fair.
If I get a special attack boost from this, I almost think it's worth pairing. Where he's already burnt his Terra.
hmm It might be. Well, let's think. Is there anything we really want our Terra for?
Uh, I could see like Steel Valiant, but like other than that, not really. Like
That
do you know?
Steel Valiant would be very strong, though. So I think we probably, I think, maintain our Terra because Terra Steel Valiant would completely sweep his team. Actually, we don't have Horus here, do we?
No, no, no.
Okay, in that case, yeah, let's go for it. Let's Terra and Fairy and go for the Dazzling Gleam. So I think that will kill here. Wonderful. So yeah, that I think that was a good decision to Terra there, and we're in now a really strong position. Normally, I would have said maybe we want to keep Terra Ghost for Zamazenta,
Hmm.
but because he's already used his Terra, we know we can deal with Zamazenta very safely with Moonblast from Iron Valiant. Here you can
Uh,
just, I think you know what to do. Oh, he's slow. This is bad news for this guy.
and I'm faster than this because it tricked away at Scarf. I
Yes,
don't.
indeed.
I guess his Zamazenta must be bulkier, or doesn't have like heavy slam if it's not coming out.
It either doesn't have Heavy Slam or it could be Heavy Slam doesn't do very much to Iron Moth. I can't be sure. I've forgotten exactly how much it does, but I can pull up the calculator. You're familiar with the showdown calculator, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Oh, he has Iron Head, and I flinched. That's so funny.
Unfortunate, but we're fine.
Yeah.
Good play there.
Um. So yeah, we could just like go Valiant and Moonblast, right? That's
hmm
our best play.
And he can go and wall you with his Como, but then he'll be coming in and taking Toxic Spikes, unless he's heavy
Well,
duty boots,
he's
which
Steel.
means he won't be. Yeah, yeah. No, I mean
Oh,
the
the
Como can come in and wall you, but the Zamazenta.
right, 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 right.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying now.
Let's see. Nice Shadow
Oh,
Ball.
bulletproof.
Oh, I would have
Right.
forgotten that as well, to be honest with you.
I was getting a little shisty. I mean, at any point, Greninja gets its Battle Bomb pretty easily now that everything's shipped down.
Mhm.
If this thing, I mean, I can't really. I just
You
gotta
can just stay
Moonblast.
in
Yeah.
Moonblast here. The Zamazenta is then completely not a threat. And we get a very nice little special attack drop. And he's just going to not speed boost again. I don't know why this guy never went for the setup. That's a really odd play.
Yeah, at this point, I can just like bring out anything faster and just win. I think.
hmm
Yeah, he's gonna drop the forfeit. I guess. He's not gonna give me the last guy.
Nice. Yeah, gotta go out with style with the Greninja, right?
Right, right, right. Absolutely. I think
So
that match went
I,
a lot better. I think we had a much better
oh, for
matchup.
sure. Yeah, HO, you'll always have some you just lose, and you have to say,
Mhm.
okay, it is what it is. That doesn't mean you should accept every loss. You should always look and analyze and say, is there anything I can do to make my team not lose to that next time? In the case of that Rabambi game, probably not. The only thing I would say is potentially Encore Iron Valiant could have
Mhm.
prevented that from being what it was.
I
Because
mean,
if you
what
hard switch in, it does get the speed boost.
what opportunity or like what is a good time to calm mind?
Or Iron Valiant.
Yeah, like what Pokemon would I even be calm minding on?
Well, one is Fortnite. A lot of them don't run Brave Bird, so
Mhm.
I like to calm mind up on those. Great Tusk is another one.
Just like anything I can like force out.
Anything you can force out or take a hit from, because sometimes the power boost is. So imagine your opponent has something that can kill your Iron Valiant. Say they've got like something that maybe can't switch in, but can take a hit and then knock you out. Maybe like an Iron Moth. If they have an Iron Moth in the back and you're sitting here with Calm Mind, Moonblast, Encore, Shadow Ball, you may want to Calm Mind up on a Great Tusk
Mhm.
because you know it can't kill you with anything. So you can then take out the Great Tusk, then the Iron Moth comes in, then you at least get a little more damage off on it. Not an ideal example because they might be able to switch, but generally with Iron Valiant, you just have to ask yourself, how much damage am I doing if I Calm Mind versus not Calm Minding? If
Right.
there's something like a Cinderace in the back, maybe it's better to just Moonblast a Great Tusk if you think they're going to stay in, because you can Moonblast, then the Cinderace will come in, then you can Shadow Ball twice. Because Shadow Ball twice will do more than just a CM into a Shadow Ball, and you can't take out the Cinderace either way, and they can't OHKO you. So because of that health you'll maintain, you'll do more damage. And sometimes Calm Minding will lead to an outright sweep, especially here we've got Terra Steel. Suppose your opponent goes into their, you Calm Mind up as they switch into, I don't know, their Goldengo, and then you Terra Steel, and they went into their Galarian Slowking to scout or something. And then you can Calm Mind up on that. You can Calm Mind up on a Toxapex without haze. So those are probably the main situations.
Right.
But if you were to run, say, a mixed set, something like Close Combat, Moonblast, Shadow Ball Encore, Knock Off, and that would be viable too.
Mhm.
It's a little more passive because on an HO team, kind of having that threat of setup is very powerful, but it's definitely viable.
Yeah.
So yeah, today just for an overview, I was actually really impressed with your playing. I think you definitely have it in you to get a lot higher on ladder. The main thing I just think it's important to focus on is one, just having realistic expectations about what's happening in a game. Don't make up a story about what's going to happen, like in the case of being able to mortal spin later.
Mhm.
Have, I guess, just realistic expectations and try to play turn by turn.
Yeah,
When it comes to,
that was
sorry,
more of
go
me
for it.
like thinking out loud and going through the thought process rather than like actually committing to that idea.
Yeah, yeah. Which and that's thinking out loud, definitely fine. Um, and going through options that may not be the best all the time is also great. Like considering all the things at your disposal. Um, but just when you create a game plan, try to make sure you're considering all of the positions in which something might occur instead of theory. Like this Pokemon looks really great. It sweeps his entire team, or he has no fire resist, so this Iron Moth looks great. But he also had a Team Blue.
Right.
Uh, but yeah, honestly, I think you made a lot of good decisions. You played really well. I am somewhat surprised you're not even like in higher ladder. You seem to have made a lot of decisions more like 1800s or 1900s.
I appreciate that.
Do you have any questions before I head off? Anything you wanted to talk about?
Honestly, uh, no, not really. Um, Yeah, no, honestly, I think I'm good. I thank you for your time.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you as well. It's really nice talking with you. And the other thing I'd say is I know today the team building, we went really deep into it and we didn't get as much time to look at battling. So it could be there are a lot of things I've missed with kind of what you're struggling with. The other thing is because HO is so formulaic in the way it plays, it can be difficult to really get a good read on what level a player's at. So if you want to maybe send me some replays of you using like a more balanced team or some where you struggled, I can help and explain to you what happened in those. Because I know this was really team building heavy, and we didn't really get into the battling so much.
No, I feel like I got a lot of valuable information out of the team building, so I don't mind that we went like in depth in it. I learned a lot,
Mm.
especially
Oh, well, I'm
about
glad to hear
players
that.
and stuff. So
But yeah, definitely. If you have any replays, and feel free to send them over.
yeah, I'll send them your way for sure.
All right. Have a great day. Hope you can maybe sleep in a little more, get some
Yeah,
extra rest,
yeah. I
and
didn't actually sleep at all last night. I
oh
wasn't
my
able to.
God,
I was a little bit nervous. I'm not gonna lie. I couldn't get any sleep.
nervous for this or
Yeah,
what?
yeah.
Oh no, no
No,
reason to be nervous. It's all a chill setting.
yeah. It's just a me
No, this
thing.
is oh no, I completely get it. I get anxious about all kinds of things. Well, yeah, definitely. Oh my God, get some sleep, please.
I will. Is there anything you want to like plug or like anything for the video?
Oh, well, I guess I would say if anyone else is interested in doing one of these tutoring sessions, maybe if you could put the link in the description, that'd be great.
Yeah.
And I have a YouTube channel if you're interested in checking that out. I'm working on making more educational kind of content to help people with team building, with battling, a lot of things about play styles and what's relevant in OU. Um, so if that sounds interesting to you, come check out my YouTube channel. And yeah, that's about it.
All right. Well, thank you so much for the session, and I'm gonna end the recording here. So I paid $25 for 1 hour of coaching, which compared to other people doing the same thing is pretty cheap. Now, do I think it's worth the money? Yes. If you have the disposable income and are passionate about improving, it is 100% worth it. Especially with someone like Pinkercross who DM'd me before we got on call to ask me questions about my strengths and weaknesses to formulate a specific plan for me. Anyways, thank you guys for watching, and I left the team on screen so you could copy it down. But if you want the Pokepaste to make it easier, I'll have it in my Discord. Join up. It'll be the first link in my description. Anyways, thanks for watching. Bye.